The introduction to the scripture reading and the reading itself have something in common this morning. They are both quite short. From the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 19, I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Here ends this morning's reading. Thanks be to God for these words of life.
Didn't get a chance to read the weekly email today. I'm going to try to lay a little bit of a foundation for which we can build up during this sermon series. So I'm not going to be focusing on a specific hymn or song this morning. I started here at Union Church in the fall of 2015. And I remember when Mike was first talking to me about the job and UCH in general, he described the 10 a.m. worship service as a blended style, which I had never really heard of before. He told me that most of the services have a combination of both traditional hymns and more contemporary Christian praise music. And at the time I thought, I'd never seen that before, but I consider myself a pretty progressive, forward-thinking kind of guy, so sounds good. Let's roll with it. And after my first few times in worship here, I quickly realized that I may not be as chill as I thought. Because hearing both styles of music in the same service really threw me for a loop. I grew up, as I think was the experience for many Protestants in the late 90s and early 2000s, with a traditional service and a contemporary service. And those two services, I don't want to say rivaled each other, because there was some crossover, but there were a decent amount of people at both of those services that were very much actively not attending the other one. And when I heard the blending of those two musical styles here at Union in the same service, I could almost hear myself saying, you can't do that. I don't know, that's not a thing. You can't do that. Now, from my conversations with others, we at Union originally had the split service thing of my youth. I think there were more than two kinds of services, but as far as music goes, there was a traditional and a contemporary, and similar to my youth, there was not a lot of overlap between the two. And in fact, quite a bit of passion around each style, which isn't inherently a bad thing. Union Church has taken great pride in our music ministry for many years, and when you have something that's nice that you care about, you don't want people messing with it, right? You don't want people eating in your brand new car, and you don't want people messing with a music ministry that's developed a pretty strong reputation. Now, with regard to each of those musical styles, the first point I want to make is the irony in the names. When I think traditional, as far as the church is concerned, I'm thinking like the hymn following the sermon today. What a Friend We Have in Jesus was written in 1855. Amazing Grace, written in 1772. Be Thou My Vision is based on an old Irish poem written sometime between the 6th and 11th centuries. And the first hymn we sung this morning, This is the Day of New Beginnings. Somebody flip to that hymn, pull it up. Somebody flip to that hymn, and I'll wait. And tell me the year that's right below the title. Just shout it out. 1978, ancient history. That's right, that traditional hymn was, for context, if you don't remember, that's the same year the soundtrack for Saturday Night Fever was crushing the Billboard Top 100. So in all seriousness, as far as Christianity goes, 1978 is actually really recent. Dare I say, contemporary. Now, on the other hand, maybe I'm being unfair by defining things as contemporary based on a 2,000-year-long scale. Maybe when we say contemporary Christian music, what we mean is stuff that's kind of got like a pop feel to it that is actually popular right now, as in recently released. And yet when I pulled up the song list for today during last week's staff meeting, I saw Better Is One Day. And I literally out loud said, oh, throwback, nice. Because even though this song very much falls under the category of contemporary worship music, it was released the same year as Kiss from a Rose by Seal, Waterfalls by TLC, and my personal favorite, yeah, that's worship music right there.
As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
See, he's quoting the Bible, opening line. Gangsta's Paradise, Coolio. Better Is One Day was released in 1995. Now, those are all bangers for sure, but contemporary. I literally grew up hearing the song Better Is One Day in the contemporary worship service, and I'm 36. So I'm pretty sure that means it's a throwback. Better Is One Day is not contemporary, it's retro. Now, I say all of this because both within this congregation as well as in Christian society at large, I've heard folks use the term traditional and the term contemporary pejoratively. And if we're really going to be honest, trying to put music into neat little boxes like that never works. To quote the opening lines of Beyoncé's Spaghetti, genres are a funny little concept, aren't they? Yes, they are. In theory, they have a simple definition that's easy to understand, but in practice, well, some may feel confined. On the surface, genres might seem straightforward, but in practice, where one begins and another ends is actually very blurry. And to claim one of these styles of music, traditional versus contemporary, is superior to the other in worship is trickier to support than you might think. Sure, you can have personal preferences, but in order to claim one is actually better in some kind of objective way, then you'd first have to spell out what the task is that we are trying to accomplish. You'd have to present a coherent theory of worship. What is it that we are trying to do here exactly? Now, there are no shortage of theories of worship, but Howard Thurman's is one that I found quite compelling. He argues that the highest act of celebration of the human spirit is the worship of God. In the act of worship, the worshiper sees themselves as being in the presence of God. In God's presence, the worshiper is neither male nor female, black nor white, Protestant nor Catholic, nor Buddhist nor Hindu, but a human spirit laid bare, stripped to whatever there is that is literal and irreducible. This kind of worship inspires a quality of life that makes barriers of separateness among people increasingly and finally untenable. What we as worship leaders should be concerned about is, as Thurman puts it, the quality of the individual's religious experience achieved through worship and the effect of that experience on daily behavior. That's my job on Sunday mornings. It's Stephen's job, and it's Rob's job, and anyone else up here leading the service. We're facilitating an experience which hopefully results in you encountering God. And that encounter with God is so moving that it changes how you live your daily life. Now, here is where I'm going to draw some lines, because there is a difference between facilitating an emotionally charged experience, or what I might even go as far as to call emotional manipulation, and facilitating a genuine encounter with the divine. Because I do think a valid critique of some of the contemporary music is its tendency towards the former. Contemporary worship music and praise music are often terms that are used interchangeably. And that is a pretty accurate descriptor because the music is overwhelmingly about praise, which is a huge part of worship. But it is not all of worship. And it certainly is not all of life. When you look at the Bible, there's a whole lot in there that's not praise. There's psalms of lament. There's prophetic judgments and apocalyptic warnings. There's people falling short again and again and again. And God is speaking through all of these things just as much as God is speaking through praise. And at least for me, not only is it not praise music, but it is also not necessarily in traditional Christian music that I find a lot of these themes reflected. Ironically, I find them reflected often in secular music of all kinds. Because although, let's be honest, there is plenty of music out there that does not reflect what you or I may hold as core tenets of our faith and moral compass, be it country, hip hop, rock, or any other genre, I can also find music in each of those genres that very much does align with what I believe. You can find some of the greatest songs of lament in country music. An authentic, honest country song about how your life is falling apart and it's most likely your fault. You can't beat that kind of conviction, that kind of pathos. I wonder how many times someone has heard a song like that and made it a personal prayer of confession. How many times has someone heard a song like that and thought, today is the last day that I will live in this hell of my own making. Today, I'm going to change. If that isn't seeing yourself in the presence of God and as a result, changing your daily behavior, I don't know what is. And you can find some of the greatest songs of prophetic calls to justice in hip hop. Hip hop and rap were created by and are still primarily shaped by the Black community here in the United States, a group that has been and continues to be both systemically and systematically marginalized. Songs like The Message by Grandmaster Flash and Fight the Power by Public Enemy make some of the same critiques the prophets of the Hebrew scriptures and Jesus himself makes about those who abuse their power. And I just dated myself with those references. In 2003, Jay-Z released the Black Album. It debuted at #1 on the US Billboard 200, and 20 years later, it was certified quadruple platinum. Even the whitest kids from the whitest neighborhoods, so me, knew about this album. And I'm sure there's no way my parents let me buy that, so I probably burned it or downloaded it illegally. But regardless, everyone, or at least it felt like everyone, was listening to that album. The second single off of that record, 99 Problems, talks explicitly about racial profiling during a traffic stop. I was 15, 16 years old, so I just started driving. But as a white kid in a white neighborhood, I didn't even know racial profiling was happening because pretty much everybody in Western Springs looked the same. And yet here it was, of all places, on my iPod. I was introduced to the ongoing reality of racism through hip hop. And that dramatically shifted my understanding of the world around me and certainly has affected my daily life. And you see similar prophetic themes in punk and metal. The band Bad Religion, whose symbol is literally just a cross with like a giant circle and a slash through it, have said themselves in interviews that their problem isn't really with the message of Jesus at all. And I would argue, in fact, their message often aligns with the message of Jesus. But instead, their issue is with the abuses and excesses of the Christian church. I can't argue with that. We've got a lot of room for improvement on that front. See, the funny thing is whether it is country, hip hop, rock, traditional, or contemporary Christian music, I personally think the genre is somewhat irrelevant to God. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? The experience of God, whether that experience is full of joy and companionship or conviction and humility, that experience can be had through any genre, because there is nothing in the world that God cannot use to reach us. God is always doing new things. God's message of peace and love and mercy and justice is constantly springing forth all around us. The question for us is whether we have a curious enough mind and an open enough heart to perceive it. Amen.